Hey, we've spent a few weeks talking about mission drift, and today I'm going to cap that off by telling a short story of how easy it is to drift away from the mission in your church. This podcast, it's not going to be a long one, but I think it's going to be a good one. So stick around because the Church Helper podcast starts right now. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of the Church Helper podcast. Our mission here is to help churches make every decision on purpose. My name is Mike. I'm really excited that you're here today. So let's just dive right into our story. This story is maybe one that you've heard before, but it clearly shows what happens when you slowly drift away from your mission, and that's why I like it so much. So here it goes. A mother and her young son are preparing a holiday meal for their family. While preparing the ham, the mother takes out the knife and cuts about 2 inches off the end of the ham before placing it in the roasting pan. Curious, the young boy asks, "Mom, why did you cut off the end of the ham before putting it in the pan?" The mother looks at her son and says, "Hey, that's how your grandmother taught me how to do it, so why don't you go ask her?" So, curious, and in search of the answer, the young son goes out to the living room to ask his grandmother. And when he finds her, he says, "Grandma, why did you teach Mom to cut off the end of the ham before you put it in the roasting pan?" And the grandmother looks at the young boy and says, "Well, that's how your great-grandma taught me how to do it, so maybe you could go ask her." So more curious than ever, the boy goes to the bedroom where the great-grandmother is resting. He gently sits beside her and says, "Great-grandma, why did you teach Grandma to cut off the end of the ham before you put it in the pan?" And the great-grandmother smiles and says, "Well, when I was your mother's age, we didn't have a pan large enough to fit an entire ham in. So, in order for it to fit, I needed to cut about 2 inches off the end." The young boy then looks at his great-grandmother for a moment and says, "Well, if we have a big enough pan to fit the ham in now, why does Mom still cut off the end of the ham?" The great-grandmother smiled and just looked at him and said, "I'm not really sure. Why don't you go ask her?" Now, this is a fun little story, but it's got a big meaning. Because when we don't ask why all the time, we end up doing things that just don't make a lot of sense. Now, sure, the ham still got cooked, but how much of it went to waste just because nobody asked why? And when we stop asking why, we stop pursuing our mission. And when we stop pursuing our mission, we end up slowly drifting away from it. And sure, 2 inches off the end of a ham isn't that much. It's only really enough for a sandwich or two. But over the course of 3 generations, that's a lot of food that never made it to the table because nobody stopped and asked, "Hey, why am I still doing this?" So when you choose to ask why all the time and keep your mission front and center at your church, you're choosing to make sure that nothing goes to waste, including the investment that God is making in you and your church. And that's it. That's today's message. Don't be a church that stops asking why, even when the answer seems obvious, and even when you think everything's going well. And that's going to help you avoid mission drift. Hey, if you're a staff member or a volunteer and you're still not sure how to identify mission drift, please feel free to reach out to us for a quick chat. We would love to engage with you. Or you can download our mission drift assessment tool. It's available on our website. And if there's somebody in your life that you think should hear this content today, but they're not really a podcaster or maybe a YouTuber, we've got you covered. Just head over to our website, churchhelper.ca/podcast for a printable transcript of today's episode. And please like and subscribe if you could. It really does make a difference and it helps us help other churches too. Thanks so much for engaging with today's episode. I'll talk to you again really soon.